River Kinslow's fingers worked the knotted muscle in Mrs. Henderson's shoulder as rain pelted against the clinic's windows. Another Friday night in Paradise Falls, Montana, population barely worth counting. The old clock on the wall ticked past 8 p.m., its rhythm matching the steady pressure of his practiced hands. "You've got magic fingers, Doctor." Kinslow, Mrs. Henderson sighed, her silver hair catching the fluorescent light. "My Arthur used to say the same thing. God rest his soul. Just River is fine, Mrs. H. And I'm no doctor, just a guy who knows his way around a rotator cuff." He adjusted the pressure, feeling the tissue release beneath his touch. The familiar work helped quiet the memories that always seemed louder on rainy nights like this. "Modest as ever. You know my granddaughter Ashley is visiting next week. Such a lovely girl, studying biology at—" The clinic's door chimed, cutting through Mrs. Henderson's latest matchmaking attempt. River glanced up, expecting to see Jimmy Mitchell hobbling in for his late-night therapy session. Instead, his hands froze mid-motion. A figure glided through the doorway in what looked like a hovering wheelchair, except no wheelchair he'd ever seen pulsed with soft blue light or moved with such liquid grace. But the chair wasn't what made his breath catch. Its occupant had skin the color of twilight mountains, a deep purple that seemed to shimmer under the harsh clinic lights. Her features were almost human, but refined to an impossible perfection. High cheekbones, full lips, and eyes that literally glowed gold. "I apologize for the late arrival," the woman said, her voice carrying an accent he couldn't place. "I require physical rehabilitation services." Mrs. Henderson gasped. River forced his professional mask back into place, though his heart hammered against his ribs. After the war, he thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. "Mrs. H will finish up next week, same time?" He helped the elderly woman sit up, his eyes constantly drawn back to the stranger. Once Mrs. Henderson had gathered her things and shuffled out, casting curious glances over her shoulder, River faced his unusual visitor. "I'm River Kinslow, and you are—" "Sarah Maddox, diplomatic envoy of Elier." She manipulated something on her chair's control panel, bringing it closer. The soft hum of its anti-gravity system filled the silence between them. "I've reviewed 17 rehabilitation facilities in this region. Yours has the highest success rate with complex cases." River crossed his arms, leaning against his treatment table. "In Paradise Falls? Lady, the most complex case I've had this month was a high school quarterback with a twisted ankle." Her golden eyes narrowed, the glow intensifying slightly. "Your military record indicates extensive experience with severe trauma rehabilitation. Operation Stellar Shield, 2031 to 2034. Chief Physical Therapist for the 42nd Combat Medical Unit." The mention of his service sent ice through his veins. His fingers instinctively traced the scar hidden beneath his shirt sleeve. "Those records are classified. I have diplomatic clearance." She tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made him want to squirm. "You humans have a saying, desperate times call for desperate measures. I am desperate, Mr. Kinslow." "River," he corrected automatically, then shook his head. "Look, I don't know what you've heard, but I'm just a small-town PT now. Whatever you're looking for." "I haven't walked in 10 years, she interrupted. "Earth years. The accident occurred here, during my first diplomatic mission. The finest medical minds on 3 planets have failed to determine why. You are my last hope." River ran a hand through his hair. Years of training warring with his instinct to run far from anything involving aliens or military operations. The rain intensified outside, drumming against the windows like distant artillery fire. "I don't even know your species' anatomy. One wrong move could make things worse." A slight smile curved her lips. "Then it's fortunate I brought detailed anatomical scans." She pressed another button on her chair, and a holographic display sprang to life between them. The blue-tinted image showed a complex network of bones, muscles, and what he assumed were organs, rotating slowly in the air. "Shall we begin?" "It's after hours, and I can pay whatever you require." She named a figure that made him choke. "Per session." River stared at the rotating hologram, his therapist's mind already noting similarities and differences to human structure. The spinal column was different, more flexible, with additional vertebrae that seemed to house some kind of energy conduits. The muscular system was denser, with layers that human anatomy didn't possess. This was exactly the kind of complication he'd been avoiding for the past 3 years. But something in her voice, a carefully hidden note of desperation, struck a chord he thought he'd buried along with his uniform. "Fine," he heard himself say, "but we start with a full evaluation. And if I think I can't help you, or that treatment would be dangerous, we stop. Deal?" Sarah's golden eyes lit up, literally glowing brighter. "Deal, though I should warn you, Mr. Kinslow. River, I can be a rather challenging patient." Despite himself, he felt the corner of his mouth twitch. "Lady, I once rehabilitated a Marine who tried to punch me because I told him he couldn't run on a shattered femur. Try me." Challenge accepted. Her chair glided closer, the hologram dissolving. "Though I should mention, my species' strength exceeds human capabilities by approximately 300%. If I decide to punch you, you might require rehabilitation yourself." River blinked, then let out a surprised laugh. "Was that a joke? Do alien diplomats make jokes? We also enjoy what you call pizza and occasionally binge-watch your Netflix series." Her expression remained serious, but there was a glimmer of something playful in those golden eyes. "Shall we proceed with the evaluation?" River moved to his desk, pulling up a new patient file on his tablet. "Let's start with the basics. What exactly happened 10 years ago?" The playfulness vanished from her expression. "I was investigating an anomaly in the Rocky Mountains. There was an energy surge of unknown origin. When I regained consciousness 3 days later, I had lost all motor function below my waist." She gestured to her legs, covered by the sleek material of what looked like a formal diplomatic uniform. "Our medical technology can repair almost any physical damage. But this defies explanation. There is no visible trauma, no nerve damage our sensors can detect. Yet here I sit." River frowned, making notes. "Have you maintained any sensation?" "Partial. Temperature, pressure, but dulled. Like..." She paused, searching for words. "Like listening to music through thick walls." "And you've tried Earth doctors?" "And Eliorian healers, and Centaurian neural specialists, and one rather questionable Martian who claimed he could cure me with crystallized starlight." Her lips twisted. "I believe you would call him a quack." River snorted. "Good word choice. All right, I need to do some hands-on assessment. Can your chair interface with my equipment?" He gestured to the treatment table. "It can do better." Sarah pressed a sequence of controls and her chair transformed, extending into a flat examination surface while maintaining its hover capability. "Eliorian engineering. We believe in convenience." "Show off," River muttered, but he was already noting how the technology could benefit his earthbound patients. "I'll need to check your range of motion and muscle response. This might feel strange, and if anything hurts or feels wrong, tell me immediately." He approached her side, hyper-aware of her otherworldly presence. This close, he could see faint patterns in her purple skin, like iridescent scales catching the light. A subtle, pleasant scent surrounded her, reminiscent of thunderstorms and something alien he couldn't identify. "May I?" he asked, hands hovering over her leg. She nodded. "You humans and your politeness. On my world, healers simply proceed with their work." "Yeah, well, on my world, we like consent before touching people." He gently began testing the mobility of her ankle joint. Despite her condition, her skin was warm, the texture smooth but slightly firmer than human tissue, especially people who just threatened to punch us with superhuman strength. "I didn't threaten. I merely stated a fact." She watched his movements with scientific interest. "Though your concern for consent is admirable, perhaps there's hope for your species yet." River worked his way up her leg, noting muscle tone and joint flexibility. Everything seemed to function normally on a mechanical level, which supported her statement about the mysterious nature of her paralysis. "You know, for someone who needs my help, you're awfully quick to suggest humans are primitive." "Not primitive? Young. There's a difference." She propped herself up on her elbows to watch him work. "Your species is like a talented child who has just discovered they can run before learning to walk properly. It's endearing, if somewhat alarming. Endearing, huh? River moved to her other leg, trying to maintain his professional demeanor. Is that diplomatic speak for cute but dumb? More like fascinating but reckless. She tilted her head, studying him, though in your case, perhaps just fascinating. River nearly lost his grip on her ankle. Was an alien diplomat flirting with him? He cleared his throat. Right. Well, let's focus on the fascinating case of your paralysis. I need to check your spinal response points. Your anatomy diagram showed some interesting differences from human structure. By all means. She lay back down, and he could have sworn she was smiling. I'm entirely at your mercy, River Kinslow. This, he thought, was either going to be the most interesting case of his career or the one that finally made him lose his mind. Possibly both. River positioned himself by her midsection, studying where the Eilorian equivalent of a spinal column would be. The holographic anatomy scan had shown a complex network of neural pathways unlike anything in human medicine. This might feel strange, he warned, placing his hands on either side of her spine. I need to check the energy flow through your neural conduits. Strange is relative, Sarah replied. On my world, healers use quantum resonance probes for this type of... She cut off with a sharp intake of breath as his fingers found a sensitive spot. Sorry, River murmured, but he noted the location carefully. Did that hurt? No, it was more like... She seemed to search for words, like striking a tuning fork, a resonance. River focused on the area, applying gentle pressure. Under his hands, he felt something he'd never experienced before. A subtle vibration, almost like an electrical current, but softer, more organic. Your neural pathways conduct some kind of energy, right? Tell me if this changes the sensation. He moved his fingers in a circular pattern, the way he might work a muscle knot, but focusing on that strange vibration. Suddenly, Sarah gasped, and her left foot twitched visibly. River froze. Did you do that consciously? No. Her voice was tight with excitement. That hasn't happened in 10 years. Do it again. He repeated the motion, but nothing happened. The vibration he'd felt had faded. The energy flow seems inconsistent. It's like there's some kind of blockage or interference. He made another note on his tablet. I'll need to research more about Eilorian neurology, but I think we might be onto something. Fascinating indeed, Sarah mused. She propped herself up again, those golden eyes studying him with renewed interest. 17 specialists with advanced quantum medical technology couldn't produce that response. Yet you, with nothing but your hands? Sometimes the old ways work best. River helped her sit up fully, trying to ignore how close they were. Though I'd feel better about this if I had more information about your species' healing processes. I can provide you with detailed medical texts. Her chair reformed around her smoothly, though they may be somewhat technical for human comprehension. River raised an eyebrow. I handled complex trauma surgery in zero gravity during the Titan conflict. Try me. Ah yes, the famous human stubbornness. She adjusted her position with elegant efficiency. Very well. I'll have the files transferred to your system. Though I should warn you, some of the mathematical concepts may be beyond current Earth science. You really can't help yourself with the superiority thing, can you? Despite his words, River found himself fighting a smile. There was something almost endearing about her casual arrogance. It's not superiority, merely fact. Sarah's expression softened slightly. Though I must admit, you're making me reconsider some of my assumptions about human capabilities. High praise indeed. River moved to his desk, pulling up a new treatment protocol form. I'll need to see you 3 times a week to start. We'll focus on re-establishing those energy pathways and... A sharp series of beeps from Sarah's chair interrupted him. Her expression tightened as she checked a display. It seems my presence here hasn't gone unnoticed. The Eilorian Medical Council is displeased with my choice to seek human assistance. Problem? Nothing I can't handle. But her fingers moved rapidly over the controls, and River caught a glimpse of what looked like angry red text scrolling past. Though perhaps we should schedule our sessions for after your normal business hours, to avoid any diplomatic complications. River leaned back against his desk, crossing his arms. Should I be worried about armed alien enforcers breaking down my door? Don't be dramatic. Sarah waved a hand dismissively. The worst they could do is trigger an interstellar incident, and I have enough diplomatic immunity to prevent that. Probably. Probably, River repeated flatly. You know, when I opened this clinic, I was hoping for a quiet life. No more combat zones, no more high-stakes medicine. And how is that working out for you? There was that hint of playfulness again in her voice. Well, I'm plotting secret therapy sessions with an alien diplomat while risking an interstellar incident, so… Not great? Sarah actually laughed, a musical sound that seemed to brighten the whole room. Life rarely gives us what we're hoping for, River Kinslow. Sometimes it gives us something far more interesting instead. The way she said his name sent an unexpected shiver down his spine. This was dangerous territory. She was a patient, an alien diplomat, and quite possibly about to get him into serious trouble with multiple governments. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, he said firmly, trying to steer things back to professional ground. Bring those medical techs and be ready to work. If we're going to fix this, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. I'll be here. She guided her chair toward the door, then paused. And River, thank you for being willing to try when others wouldn't. Before he could respond, she was gone, leaving only a faint scent of ozone and thunderstorms in her wake. River sank into his office chair, running a hand through his hair. What the hell have I gotten myself into? He muttered to the empty clinic. The rain continued to drum against the windows, but now instead of reminding him of artillery fire, it made him think of purple skin and golden eyes. He pulled up his tablet and started researching everything he could find about Illyrian physiology. If he was going to risk an interstellar incident, he damn well was going to make it worth it. As he worked late into the night, he couldn't shake the feeling that his quiet life in Paradise Falls was about to become anything but quiet. And strangest of all, he wasn't sure he minded. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. By day, River treated his regular patients, sprained ankles and arthritic joints. But as darkness fell and the small Montana town quieted, his real work began. Tonight marked their 5th session. River studied the Illyrian medical text projected above his desk, the alien symbols swimming before his tired eyes. A half-empty coffee cup sat forgotten beside him. You know, Sarah's voice cut through his concentration, most humans sleep at this hour. He looked up to find her hovering in the doorway, her chair's soft blue glow casting shadows across her features. Most humans aren't trying to decode alien medical journals. And how is that going? She glided closer, peering at his notes. Well, I've learned that your nervous system operates on quantum principles that technically shouldn't be possible, and your cellular regeneration makes human healing look like a kid with a Band-Aid. He rubbed his eyes. But I think I'm starting to understand the energy pathways. Impressive. She raised an eyebrow. Though you've mislabeled the tertiary neural nexus as a lymphatic channel. River squinted at his diagram. That's not what the translation said. The translation matrix struggles with technical terminology. She reached over, her purple fingers brushing his as she corrected the label. That strange electrical tingle passed between them again. Perhaps I should teach you Illyrian directly. It would be more efficient. Right, because learning an alien language is exactly what I need on my plate right now. But he found himself studying the graceful curves of the alien script, though I suppose it couldn't hurt to learn the basic medical terms. I'll add linguistics to our sessions then. Her golden eyes sparkled with amusement. Unless you're afraid it might overtax your human brain? Keep it up with the superior alien act, and I'll start playing country music during your therapy. Sarah's face contorted in mock horror. You wouldn't dare. That noise you call country western violates at least 3 interstellar peace treaties. River laughed, surprised by how natural their banter had become. Come on, let's get started. I want to try something new today. He helped her transfer to the treatment table, trying to ignore how his pulse quickened when she gripped his arm for support. Her skin was always warm, like sunlight trapped beneath purple silk. I've been mapping the energy flows, he explained, positioning his hands along her spine. There's a pattern to the blockages, but it shifts. Watch this. He pressed gently at a specific point, and that now familiar vibration hummed beneath his fingers. Sarah gasped as her right leg twitched. That's stronger than before. The energy responds to pressure points, but not in any way that matches human acupressure or neural pathways. He moved his hands following the invisible current. It's almost like playing an instrument, finding the right notes. An interesting analogy. She turned her head to watch him work. On Elior, we have energy healers who use quantum harmonics, but they require advanced technology. Maybe that's the problem. River concentrated on the vibration, letting instinct guide his movements. Your doctors are so focused on technology, they've forgotten that healing can be organic, natural. Natural? Sarah's voice held a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Like your earth remedies of herbs and crystals? Like understanding that sometimes the simplest solution is the right one. River focused on a particularly strong energy point, his thumbs working in small circles. Your body knows how to heal itself. It just needs a reminder. Suddenly, both of Sarah's legs jerked, and she let out a sound between a gasp and a laugh. That felt good? River grinned, noting the location carefully. Like waking up. She pushed herself up on her elbows, golden eyes bright with excitement. Do it again. He repeated the motion, watching as her toes curled in response. The energy flow is stronger tonight. Maybe because we've been working consistently or... The clinic's security system chimed an alert, cutting him off. River's military instincts kicked in immediately. Are you expecting company? Sarah's expression hardened. Number, but I can guess who it is. She quickly pulled up a display on her chair's control panel. 3 Eliorian Medical Council officials. They must have tracked my location. I thought you said they couldn't interfere. River moved to the windows, checking the parking lot. 3 figures in sleek silver uniforms were approaching the clinic's entrance. They can't officially stop me. Sarah's fingers flew over her controls. But they can make things very difficult for both of us. River's jaw tightened. Let them try. River, her voice softened. You don't have to get involved in Eliorian politics. I can handle this. He turned to face her, something protective and fierce rising in his chest. You're my patient, and I don't abandon my patients. Their eyes met, and for a moment the air seemed charged with more than just Eliorian energy. Then the door chimed again, and 3 tall figures entered the clinic. The leader, a male Eliorian with steel-gray skin, stepped forward. Diplomat Maddox, this is unfortunate. Counselor Venn. Sarah's voice was pure ice. I wasn't aware the medical council made house calls. When a high-ranking diplomat endangers herself with primitive treatments, we make exceptions. Venn's golden eyes flicked dismissively to River. Human, you will cease these unauthorized procedures immediately. River crossed his arms, planting himself between the officials and Sarah. Last I checked, this was my clinic on Earth, where I'm fully licensed to practice physical therapy. Your Earth credentials are meaningless, the female official to Venn's left sneered. You can't possibly understand Eliorian physiology. Really? River raised an eyebrow. Want to explain to me how the quantum neural pathways interface with the tertiary nexus? Or should I draw you a diagram? All 3 officials blinked in surprise. Sarah made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Impossible, Venn declared. No human could... Show them, Sarah interrupted. River, show them what you can do. He understood immediately. Moving back to the treatment table, he placed his hands on her spine, finding that sweet spot of energy. Within seconds, both of Sarah's legs moved in a controlled flex. The officials muttered among themselves in rapid Illyrian. River caught a few words from his studies. Unprecedented and impossible featured prominently. As you can see, Sarah said smoothly, Dr. Kinslow's treatments are producing results that your advanced technology failed to achieve for a decade. A temporary neural response doesn't indicate true healing, Venn argued, but he looked less certain. Then let us continue the treatment, River suggested, keeping his voice professional despite his rising anger. Document the results. If it doesn't work, what have you lost? And if it does work, Sarah added, Think of the implications for our own healing arts. We've become so dependent on technology, we've forgotten there might be other ways. The officials conferred again. Finally, Ven turned back to them. You have 2 Earth weeks to demonstrate measurable progress. After that, if we're not satisfied, Diplomat Maddox returns to Elior for proper treatment. After they left, River let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Well, that was fun. You were magnificent. Sarah's eyes shone with something more than their usual golden glow. The look on their faces when you started discussing quantum neural pathways? I've been studying, he shrugged, suddenly self-conscious under her admiring gaze, though I might have bluffed a little on the details. A little, she laughed. River Kinslow, you are full of surprises. Speaking of surprises, he gestured to her legs. Want to try something really impressive for our next trick? What did you have in mind? He moved to support her shoulders. I think you're ready to try standing. With help, he added quickly, seeing her expression. Baby steps. Baby steps? She wrinkled her nose. Is this another Earth idiom? Just trust me. He positioned himself to take her weight. Put your arms around my neck. She complied, and suddenly they were very close, her face inches from his. That thunderstorm scent surrounded him, making it hard to focus on the medical aspects of what they were doing. Ready? He asked, his voice rougher than he intended. Yes. Her breath brushed his cheek. Slowly, carefully, he helped her rise. Her legs trembled but held as he supported most of her weight. For the first time, he realized how tall she was, nearly his height. Well, she whispered, this is intimate. Professional, he corrected quickly. This is completely professional. Of course, but her fingers curled against the nape of his neck, sending shivers down his spine. Though I must say, Earth's professional standards are quite enjoyable. River knew he should step back, maintain proper distance. Instead, he found himself studying the subtle patterns in her skin, the way her eyes seemed to hold entire galaxies. We should, he started. Yes? Her lips curved upward. The moment stretched, charged with possibilities. Then her legs buckled, and he had to catch her quickly, breaking the spell. Sorry, she gasped as he helped her back to the table. It seems my stamina needs work. Hey, this is huge progress. He kept his voice steady, professional. A few weeks ago, you couldn't move your toes. Now you're standing? Thanks to you. She caught his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. River. His phone buzzed. The alarm he'd set for end of session. They both stared at their joined hands for a moment before slowly pulling apart. Same time tomorrow? He asked, helping her back to her chair. Try to stop me. She paused at the door. And River, thank you for standing up to them. Not many would have. After she left, River sat at his desk, staring at his notes without seeing them. He was in dangerous territory, and he knew it. She was his patient, an alien diplomat, someone who would eventually return to her own world. But as he traced the Alarian symbols she'd corrected earlier, he couldn't help but smile. For the first time since the war, he felt truly alive, and that was worth any risk. A week after the Eliorian official's visit, River found himself working late again. The clinic was quiet except for the soft hum of Sarah's hover chair and the steady Montana rain outside. They'd fallen into a comfortable routine during their evening sessions, but tonight something felt different. Tense. Your energy patterns are stronger, River noted, his hands moving along her spine with practiced confidence. But you're holding back. What's wrong? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. On Elior, physical imperfection it's more than just a medical condition. It's seen as a moral failing. River's hands stilled. What do you mean? Our society values perfection above all else. Those who can't maintain it are considered lesser. Her voice grew bitter. A diplomat who can't walk? I might as well have committed treason. That's ridiculous. The words came out sharper than he intended. You're one of the most capable people I've ever met. Am I? She turned her head to look at him, golden eyes dim with pain. I've spent 10 years trying to prove my worth from this chair. Do you know what they call me in the diplomatic corps? The broken ambassador. Something protective and angry flared in River's chest. His fingers tightened slightly on her shoulders. You're not broken. No? A sad smile curved her lips. Then why can't your magic hands fix me completely? Why do I still wake up every morning hoping today will be the day I can walk normally, only to face disappointment again? River moved around the table to face her directly. Look at me. He waited until she met his eyes. You want to talk about broken? After the war, I couldn't even touch patients without having flashbacks. Too many soldiers died under my hands during combat surgery. I thought I was done, finished as a therapist. What changed? I realized that being damaged doesn't make you broken. It makes you human. He paused. Or, well, Eliorian in your case. That earned him a small laugh. How very Earth-centric of you. Hey, I'm learning alien medicine for you. Cut me some slack on the metaphors. Her expression softened. You never talk about the war. You never talk about your accident. He raised an eyebrow in challenge. Touché. She pushed herself up on her elbows, closer to his eye level. Perhaps we could make a trade. A story for a story? Before River could respond, the clinic's security system blared a warning. Multiple vehicles were approaching. That's not good, River muttered, moving to the windows. 3 sleek hover cars with Eliorian diplomatic markings were pulling into the parking lot. I thought we had 2 weeks. They're not medical counsel. Sarah's voice was tight as she checked her chair's display. They're enforcement division. This is bad, River. Define bad. They're authorized to use force to protect diplomatic interests. She started activating her chair's systems. I need to leave. Like hell. River was already moving, securing doors and activating the clinic's security protocols. Upgrades he'd installed after the war that most small-town physical therapists definitely didn't need. There's a back exit through the storage room. If we can. The front door exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. 4 Eliorian enforcers in black combat suits strode through the smoke, weapons drawn. Diplomat Maddox, the leader announced, by order of the High Council, you are to return to Elior immediately. This experimental treatment is terminated. River positioned himself between them and Sarah, combat instincts kicking in as he assessed threats and angles. This is a sovereign Earth medical facility. You have no jurisdiction here. Stand aside, human. The leader raised his weapon, some kind of energy pistol. This doesn't concern you. Actually, River's voice was deadly calm. It does. What happened next was a blur of motion. River's war training took over as he moved, using the enforcer's own momentum against them. The first one went down with a surprised grunt as River redirected his charge into a treatment table. The second caught an elbow to the throat before he could bring his weapon to bear. The leader fired, but River was already moving, rolling under the energy blast. He came up inside the enforcer's guard, stripped the weapon from his hands with a move he'd learned in close-quarters combat training, and had the alien on his knees in 3 seconds flat. The fourth enforcer stood frozen, weapon half raised, clearly reassessing the situation. Now, River said pleasantly, keeping the leader in a joint lock, let's discuss this like civilized beings, starting with why you thought it was a good idea to attack a clinic on U.S. soil. You dare, the leader started, but River applied slightly more pressure, and he subsided with a pained hiss. River! Sarah's voice was filled with something between awe and concern. You didn't tell me you could fight like that. You didn't ask. He maintained his hold while watching the other enforcers carefully, just like they didn't ask why a decorated combat medic might have combat training. Sloppy intelligence work, gentlemen. The fourth enforcer slowly lowered his weapon. Perhaps we could discuss this situation more diplomatically. Excellent suggestion. River eased his grip slightly but didn't release the leader. Sarah, your thoughts? She guided her chair forward, every inch the commanding diplomat despite the situation. You will return to the council with this message. I am continuing my treatment under Dr. Kinslow's care, as is my right as a diplomatic envoy. Any further attempts to interfere will result in a formal complaint to both Earth and the Eliorian authorities. Am I clear? The enforcers exchanged glances. Finally, the leader nodded stiffly. River released him, stepping back but staying ready. As they filed out, Sarah added, "And you'll be paying for the door." Once they were gone, River sagged against his desk, adrenaline crash hitting hard. Well, that was impressive, terrifying, oddly attractive. Sarah moved closer, her golden eyes intense. All of the above? He laughed shakily. I was going to say, not how I planned to spend my evening. River, she reached for his hand, and he let her take it. Thank you. No one has ever fought for me like that. The way she looked at him made his heart race faster than the combat had. Yeah, well, he squeezed her fingers gently. I told you, I don't abandon my patients. Is that all I am? Her voice was soft. Just a patient? River knew he should step back, maintain professional distance. Instead, he found himself drawing closer, drawn in by those galaxy-deep eyes. Sarah! The air between them crackled with tension. River was acutely aware of every point of contact, her warm fingers interlaced with his, the subtle scent of thunderstorms that always surrounded her, those golden eyes that seemed to see right through him. You never answered my question, Sarah murmured. Am I just a patient to you? River swallowed hard. You know it's more complicated than that. Is it? Her free hand reached up to touch his face, fingers tracing a small scar near his temple. On my world, we have a saying, complexity is often the mask simplicity wears when it's afraid. Deep thoughts from a race that can't appreciate country music, he quipped, but his voice was rough. She smiled. There you go again, using humor to deflect. Another fascinating human trait. Speaking of fascinating traits, he gestured to where her hand still cupped his cheek. Is this standard Eliorian physical therapy? No. Her thumb brushed his lower lip, sending electricity down his spine. This is something else entirely. River knew he should step back. There were a dozen reasons why this was a bad idea. Professional ethics, interspecies, complications. The fact that armed enforcers had just tried to drag her away. Instead, he found himself leaning closer. Sarah, he whispered, if we do this, yes. Everything gets more complicated. She laughed softly. River Kinslow, you just fought off 4 armed enforcers to protect me. I think we're past complicated. He couldn't argue with that logic. Slowly giving her every chance to pull away, he closed the distance between them. Their lips met, and the world seemed to spark like one of her energy surges. The kiss was gentle at first, exploratory. Her lips were warmer than a human's, and that thunderstorm scent filled his senses. Then her fingers threaded through his hair, pulling him closer, and gentleness gave way to something more urgent. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. River rested his forehead against hers, trying to collect his scattered thoughts. Well, Sarah said, a bit breathlessly, that was therapeutic. River couldn't help but laugh. Is that your professional opinion, Diplomat Maddox? Oh, very professional. Her eyes sparkled with mischief. In fact, I think we should schedule additional sessions to explore this treatment modality further. You're impossible, but he was grinning like an idiot. Says the human who just took down 4 Eliorian enforcers to defend my honor. She traced the line of his jaw. My very own Earth Knight in shining. What is that horrible fabric you're wearing? It's called scrubs, and they're practical. They're offensive to at least 3 of my senses. She wrinkled her nose. We'll have to work on your wardrobe. Hey, focus on walking before you start planning my fashion rehabilitation. Her expression softened. Speaking of which, I think I'm ready to try standing again. If my incredibly talented therapist is willing. River stepped back, switching smoothly into professional mode, despite his racing heart. You sure? After all the excitement tonight. I'm sure. She held out her hands. I trust you. Those simple words hit him harder than any of the enforcers had. Carefully, he helped her rise from the chair, supporting her weight as her legs trembled beneath her. Easy, he murmured. Small steps. This time, when her arms went around his neck, there was no pretense of professional distance. She leaned into him, and he steadied her, their bodies finding a natural balance. Look at that, he said softly. You're standing. Thanks to you. She pressed her forehead to his. You know, when I first came to Earth, I thought humans were limited, simple. I've never been so happy to be wrong. We have our moments. He helped her take a small step, then another. Though I have to ask, of all the clinics on Earth, why did you really choose mine? Sarah was quiet for a moment, concentrating on her movements. I reviewed hundreds of facilities, thousands of practitioners. But when I saw your file, there was something in your eyes in that old military photo. A kindness, despite everything you'd seen, everything you'd lost. She met his gaze. I thought, here is someone who understands what it means to be broken and find a way forward anyway. River's throat tightened. And now, she smiled, taking another step. Now I think the council was right to be worried, but not because your methods are primitive. Oh, because you make me believe anything is possible. She steadied herself against his chest. Even an Aliorian diplomat falling for a small-town human therapist. Before River could respond, her legs buckled. He caught her easily, lowering her back to the chair. Sorry, she breathed. I got carried away. Hey, he knelt beside her chair. You just took 6 steps. That's huge progress. It's not enough. Not with the council's deadline. We'll figure it out. He squeezed her hand. Together. She studied him for a long moment. You know they won't stop. The enforcers, the council. They'll keep coming. Let them. River's jaw set stubbornly. I've got a few more moves they haven't seen yet. My protective warrior healer. She traced his knuckles, still slightly bruised from the fight. What am I going to do with you? Well, for starters, you could let me take you to dinner. When you're feeling stronger. Her eyes widened. Are you asking me on a, what do humans call it, a date? Unless that violates some interstellar treaty? Only about 6 of them. She grinned. But I've always been a bit of a rebel. A few nights later, River's living room looked like a cross between a medical research center and a casual date night. Holographic anatomical displays hovered above coffee table takeout containers, while Netflix queued up on the TV. I still can't believe you ordered pineapple on your half, River said, watching Sarah delicately pick up a slice of pizza. Isn't that against some sophisticated alien dietary law? Says the man who puts ranch dressing on his pizza? She wrinkled her nose. Besides, the combination of sweet and savory flavors is quite sophisticated. Your Earth food critics simply haven't evolved enough to appreciate it. Oh, here we go with the evolution comments again. But he was grinning as he settled beside her on the couch. Her hover chair sat empty nearby, a testament to her growing strength and mobility. I'm simply stating facts. She took a precise bite, somehow managing to make eating pizza look elegant. Though I must admit, Earth cuisine has its charms. High praise from someone who probably eats quantum-enhanced space caviar or whatever. Actually, she dabbed her lips with a napkin, most Eliorian food is synthesized for optimal nutritional value. This is much more interesting. River watched as she savored another bite, fascinated by how she could make even this mundane activity seem otherworldly. So what you're saying is, I corrupted you with junk food. You've corrupted me in many ways, River Kinslow. Her golden eyes sparkled. Pizza is just the beginning. As if to prove her point, she leaned over and kissed him, tasting of pineapple and possibilities. When they broke apart, River was breathless and grinning. Now that's what I call cultural exchange. Indeed. She settled against his side, her warmth seeping through his t-shirt. Now explain to me again why we're watching this particular Earth entertainment. River picked up the remote. Because you can't live on Earth without seeing the classics. The Princess Bride is mandatory viewing. And this is considered a classic of human cinema? She studied the movie description skeptically. It seems rather simplistic. Trust me. He started the film, then added, though fair warning, if you start critiquing the sword-fighting techniques, you're sleeping in your hover chair tonight. As if your primitive Earth weapons could compare to a Lyorian blade dancing. But she snuggled closer, her head finding that perfect spot on his shoulder. As the movie played, River found himself watching Sarah more than the screen. She changed into what she called casual Earth attire. Leggings and one of his old Army PT shirts that somehow looked elegant on her. Her purple skin seemed to glow softly in the TV's light. "You're staring," she murmured without taking her eyes off the screen. "Can't help it. You're more interesting than the movie." Flattery will not distract me from noting the numerous scientific impossibilities in this story, but her fingers intertwined with his. "Though I do appreciate the sentiment about true love." "Yeah." River squeezed her hand. "Even if it's a primitive human concept?" She turned to face him, movie forgotten. "You know, for someone who keeps calling himself primitive, you've accomplished something no advanced Eliorian healer could do. Made you appreciate bad Earth movies? Made me feel whole again." Her voice softened. "Not just physically. Before I met you, I'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen as more than my injury." River's throat tightened. "Sarah, let me finish." She placed a finger against his lips. "On Elior, everything is about perfection, optimization, advancement. But you showed me that healing isn't just about fixing what's broken. It's about accepting the breaks and growing stronger at the mended places." "Now who's being poetic?" But his voice was rough with emotion. "I blame your terrible Earth entertainment." She glanced at the TV where Wesley was scaling the cliffs of insanity. "Though I must admit, this story has a certain charm. Just wait until you get to the Rouses." "The what?" "Rodents of unusual size." He grinned at her confused expression. "Trust me, it's great." They settled back to watch, but River's mind was racing. Tomorrow they had another session with the Medical Council observers. Time was running out on their 2-week deadline, and while Sarah's progress was remarkable, she still couldn't walk independently. As if reading his thoughts, she squeezed his hand. "Stop worrying. We'll figure it out." "How did you know I was—" "Your shoulders tense when you're strategizing." She traced patterns on his palm. "Another charming human tell." "You know," he said slowly, "whatever happens with the council, I'm not letting you go without a fight." She turned those galaxy-deep eyes on him. "Even if it means more armed enforcers? Even if it means taking on your whole damn planet?" The words came out fiercer than he intended, but he meant them. "My protective warrior." She kissed him softly. "What would your Earth authorities say about you starting an interstellar incident over a patient?" "You're not just a patient anymore." He tucked a strand of her silvery hair behind her ear. "You're—" "Yes?" Her eyes glowed brighter. "You're everything," River finished softly, "and that terrifies me more than any Eliorian enforcer." "Ah," Sarah's fingers traced his jawline. "So the brave warrior healer does feel fear. Only when it matters." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Only when I have something worth losing." The movie played forgotten in the background as they sat in comfortable silence, both aware of the weight of tomorrow's deadline hanging over them. Finally, Sarah spoke. "Tell me something about the war, something you've never told anyone." River tensed slightly, but her warm presence against his side anchored him. "I had this patient in the combat hospital on Titan. Young kid, maybe 20, both legs shattered by artillery fire. Everyone said he'd never walk again. But you helped him?" "I tried. Spent weeks working with him, way beyond what protocol required. He had this determination, reminded me of someone I know." He smiled slightly at her. "One day he took his first steps. It wasn't pretty, wasn't perfect, but he did it." "That's a good memory, though. Why does it haunt you?" River's jaw tightened. 3 days later, our position was hit. The kid, he could have made it to the bunker if he'd been faster. If I'd done better with his rehabilitation. "River," Sarah turned his face toward her. "You can't—" "I know, logically I know. But that's why I left combat medicine. Why I came here, thinking I could hide in a small town treating sprained ankles and arthritis." He met her eyes. "Until you rolled in and turned my whole world upside down." "For what it's worth," she said softly, "I'm glad I did." Before he could respond, her chair's communication panel chimed. They both stiffened, knowing what it meant. "The council wants to meet early," Sarah confirmed, checking the message. "They'll be here in an hour." River straightened, combat medic focus settling over him like armor. Then we better give them a show they won't forget. At the clinic, River ran through their practiced routine one last time. Sarah's progress was undeniable. She could now stand unassisted for several minutes and take multiple steps with minimal support. But would it be enough? The council members arrived precisely on schedule, led by Ven. Their silver uniforms seemed to absorb the clinic's harsh lighting. Diplomat Maddox, Ven began formally. Dr. Kinslow, we are here to evaluate. Actually, River interrupted, we're ready to demonstrate. He moved to Sarah's side. If you'd all take positions around the treatment area. The officials exchanged glances but complied. River helped Sarah from her chair, noting how smoothly she transferred her weight now. 2 weeks ago, he addressed the council, Sarah couldn't move her legs voluntarily. Now, ... He stepped back, keeping his hands ready but not touching her. Sarah stood straight and proud, her golden eyes challenging the officials. Then with careful determination, she took one step, then another. The council members muttered among themselves as she walked slowly but steadily across the treatment area. 6 steps, 8, 10. When she reached the far side, River moved to support her, but she waved him off. Instead, she turned and walked back, her movements growing more confident with each step. Impossible, one official whispered. No, Sarah said firmly, coming to a stop in the center of the room. Not impossible, just a different way of healing, one that your advanced technology couldn't accomplish. Ven's expression was unreadable. The progress is noteworthy. However, nothing, River cut in. She's walking. That's what matters. What matters, Ven said coldly, is protocol. Diplomat Maddox must return to Elior for proper evaluation and documentation of these methods. Like hell. River moved to Sarah's side. She's not going anywhere until her treatment is complete. That is not your decision to make, human. No, Sarah said, her voice carrying that commanding, diplomatic tone River had come to admire. It's mine, and I'm staying. The tension in the clinic crystallized as Sarah's declaration hung in the air. Ven's golden eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. You forget yourself, Diplomat Maddox, he said softly. Your position, your responsibilities. My position? Sarah's laugh was sharp. You mean the one you've been trying to strip from me for 10 years? The responsibilities you claim I can't fulfill from a hover chair? Sarah, another council member stepped forward, her tone placating. Be reasonable. Your progress is remarkable, yes, but you need proper Eliorian care. What I need, Sarah cut in, is right here. Her hand found River's, fingers intertwining. A healer who sees me as a person, not a problem to be solved. Who understood that sometimes the simplest touch can accomplish more than all your quantum harmonics? River squeezed her hand, feeling the slight tremor in her muscles from standing so long, but she remained upright, defiant. This is about more than medical treatment, isn't it? Ven's gaze flicked to their joined hands. You've become emotionally compromised. Oh, River started, but Sarah's grip tightened, stopping him. Yes, she said simply. I have. I've become compromised by kindness, by determination, by a way of healing that treats the spirit as well as the body. Her golden eyes blazed. And if that violates some Eliorian protocol about maintaining perfect detachment, then perhaps our protocols need to change. You would risk everything. Your position, your status for this? Ven gestured dismissively at River. For a primitive earth therapy and a human healer. Watch who you're calling primitive, River growled, but there was a hint of amusement in his voice. He'd heard far worse insults in combat. I'm not risking everything, Sarah countered. I'm choosing to live fully, imperfectly, wonderfully. Something our people have forgotten how to do in their pursuit of perfection. She took a step forward, then another, moving with growing confidence toward the council members. Look at me. Really look. Yes, I still need help sometimes. Yes, my gait isn't perfect. But I'm walking. Thanks to River's primitive methods and his belief that healing is about more than just fixing what's broken. The council members shifted uncomfortably as she approached. River stayed close, ready to support her if needed, but letting her fight this battle her way. You have a choice, Sarah continued. You can either accept that there might be value in Earth's medical approaches, in combining our knowledge with theirs, or you can try to force me back to Elior. But I warn you," her voice hardened, "the diplomatic incident of forcing a high-ranking envoy against her will might be more trouble than it's worth." "Is that a threat, Diplomat Maddox?" Ven asked silkily. It's a negotiation." A smile curved her lips, "which, as you might recall, is my specialty." The council members conferred in rapid Eliorian. River caught fragments of their debate, words about precedent, about appearance, about change. Finally, Ven turned back to them. "You propose what exactly?" "A joint medical research initiative," Sarah said promptly. "Official recognition of Earth therapeutic techniques as complementary to our own methods. And," she squeezed River's hand, "my continued treatment here, under Dr. Kinslow's care, with regular progress reports to the Council. And in return, you get to claim credit for pioneering a breakthrough in interspecies medicine, one that could help countless others who haven't responded to traditional Eliorian treatments." River had to admire her strategy, appealing to both their political instincts and their drive for medical advancement. He could see the calculations running behind Ven's eyes. "It would require extensive documentation," one council member mused. "Studies, protocols." "Which I'm happy to help develop," River offered, catching on to Sarah's plan. "Combining Earth physical therapy with Eliorian energy healing could revolutionize treatment for both our species." Ven studied them both for a long moment. "And the personal aspect of this arrangement is none of your damn business," River said pleasantly. To everyone's surprise, Ven's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Dr. Kinslow." "Probably both," Sarah murmured, but her eyes shone with pride. "Very well," Ven announced after another moment of consideration. "We will take your proposal to the High Council. In the meantime, you may continue your treatment here." "How generous of you," Sarah said dryly, but her posture relaxed slightly. "However," Ven added, his golden eyes fixing on River, "be aware that this arrangement will face significant scrutiny. Any hint of impropriety or failure?" "Won't happen," River cut in firmly. "I don't fail my patients. Even when they're impossible alien diplomats who insult your music taste?" Sarah asked innocently. "Especially then." He grinned at her, then turned serious as he addressed the council. "Look, I know you have doubts about my methods, about Earth medicine, about—" He glanced at Sarah. "Everything. But give us a chance to prove this can work. Not just for Sarah, but for anyone who needs a different approach to healing." The council members filed out, leaving River and Sarah alone in the suddenly quiet clinic. As soon as the door closed behind them, Sarah's legs trembled. River caught her smoothly, helping her to sit. "That," he said, "was impressive diplomacy." "That," she countered, "was terrifying. I wasn't sure they'd agree." "They didn't have much choice. You're pretty formidable when you get all diplomatic." Says the man who was ready to fight the entire council barehanded. River knelt in front of her chair, taking her hands in his. "Hey, I meant what I said. We're going to make this work. Even with the whole galaxy watching?" She traced his knuckles, still slightly scarred from the enforcer fight. "Even with the council breathing down our necks?" "Even then." He lifted her hand to his lips. "Though I have to ask, did you plan this all along? The research initiative? The diplomatic angle?" Sarah's eyes sparkled. "Would it impress you if I said yes?" "Honestly, it would terrify me a little." She laughed, the sound bright and free. "No, I didn't plan it, but a good diplomat knows how to turn any situation to advantage." Her expression softened. "And you, River Kinslow, are definitely an advantage worth fighting for. Even though I listen to country music, we all have our flaws." She pulled him closer. "Though I suppose I could learn to tolerate it, for the sake of interstellar relations." "How diplomatic of you." He closed the distance between them, kissing her softly. When they broke apart, Sarah rested her forehead against his. "So what now?" "Now?" River stood, offering her his hands. "Now we keep working, one step at a time." She took his hands, rising steadily to her feet. "Together?" "Together." He supported her as she took a step, then another. Though fair warning, if we're doing this research initiative thing, you're going to have to learn proper medical terminology. No more calling the spinal column the posterior energy conduit. And you'll have to learn Eilurian anatomy properly. No more guessing where the quantum neural nexuses are. Deal, he steadied her as she turned. Though maybe we can take a break from studying tonight? I still have half a pizza at home, and there's this Earth classic called Star Wars you need to see. Sarah's laugh echoed through the clinic. My dear warrior healer, are you trying to educate me in Earth culture again? Hey, it's important research. For the initiative. Of course it is. She took another step, stronger this time. Lead the way, Doctor. Kinslow. Together they walked toward the door, each step a small victory, each moment a bridge between their worlds. Outside, the Montana night was full of stars, some of which, River now knew, held worlds he'd never imagined. But right here, in this small-town clinic with an impossible alien diplomat who'd turned his life upside down, he'd found something worth fighting for. And really, that was all that mattered. 6 months later, the Montana sun painted the beach of Flathead Lake in golden hues. River watched as Sarah walked along the water's edge, her purple skin shimmering in the late afternoon light. She moved with growing confidence, her steps sure against the shifting sand. You're staring again, she called over her shoulder, golden eyes sparkling with amusement. Can't help it. River jogged to catch up with her. My star patient is showing off. Patient? She raised an eyebrow. Is that what you're calling your fiancé now? The word still gave him a thrill. The engagement ring on her finger, custom designed to complement her Eilurian physiology, caught the sunlight, sending prismatic reflections across the sand. Still can't believe you said yes, he murmured, taking her hand. After you revolutionized interspecies medicine, stood up to my entire government, and learned to appreciate quantum physics. She squeezed his fingers. How could I say no? They walked in comfortable silence for a while, waves lapping at their feet. The research initiative had exceeded everyone's expectations. River's clinic now hosted doctors from both worlds, combining Earth's hands-on healing with Eilurian energy techniques. But more importantly, it had become a symbol of what was possible when different worlds came together. Remember the first time you came to the clinic? River asked, pulling her close as a cool breeze swept off the lake. You thought I was hallucinating when I mentioned Netflix. In my defense, most aliens don't lead with their streaming preferences. Sarah laughed, the sound carrying across the water. Most aliens haven't fallen in love with impossible Earth healers either. Impossible? River spun her gently, supporting her as she turned. I thought that was your specialty, Ambassador Maddox. Her new title, earned through her work bridging their worlds, sat well on her shoulders. The Council had finally recognized that sometimes the most effective diplomacy came from understanding imperfection. You know what I love most about Earth? She asked, stopping to face him. The pizza? The way your world taught me that healing isn't about erasing scars. She touched the faded mark on his temple. It's about learning to dance with them. River pulled her into a kiss, soft and sweet as the setting sun. When they parted, her eyes glowed like captured stars. Ready to head back? He asked, noting how she'd walked further than ever before. Not yet. She smiled, that mischievous expression he'd fallen in love with. I want to feel every step, every moment. After 10 years in that chair, I never want to take walking for granted again. Then we'll walk as long as you want. They continued down the beach, their footprints mixing in the sand. A physical therapist from small-town Montana, and an alien diplomat who'd found healing in the most unexpected place. Behind them, their tracks told a story of two paths becoming one, of barriers crossed and distances bridged. You know, Sarah said thoughtfully, on Eilur, they're already writing stories about us. The warrior healer and the broken diplomat who changed two worlds. And what do you think of their stories? They're missing the best part. She stopped, pulling him close as the sun dipped toward the horizon. Which is that sometimes the greatest healing comes not from fixing what's broken. She rested her forehead against his, but from finding someone who shows you that being broken never made you any less whole. River held her close as the stars began to appear, stars that no longer seemed quite so distant, Together they had bridged worlds, challenged prejudices, and proven that love could heal wounds no medicine could touch. And as they walked back along the shore, their steps matched perfectly, not because they had to, but because they chose to walk this path together. Dear listeners, I hope this story touched your heart and showed you that healing comes in many forms. River and Sarah's journey is more than just a love story between a human therapist and an alien diplomat. It's a testament to the power of looking beyond our differences, challenging our preconceptions, and finding strength in our so-called imperfections. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most profound healing happens when we least expect it, and often in ways we never imagine. Whether you're dealing with physical challenges, emotional scars, or just feeling different in a world that values conformity, remember, being broken doesn't make you any less whole. Sometimes our breaks become the very places where light gets in, where growth happens, and where we find our greatest strength. In a world that often demands perfection, River and Sarah's story shows us that real connection happens when we dare to be authentically ourselves, vulnerabilities and all. Their journey from therapist and patient to partners who helped heal each other reminds us that love, in its purest form, doesn't try to fix us. It gives us the courage to heal ourselves. Would you like to follow River and Sarah on their next adventure? Their story could continue in many ways, exploring their wedding preparations and the cultural challenges of an interspecies marriage, following their work expanding the joint medical initiative across Earth and Eliar, discovering new healing techniques that combine both worlds' knowledge, facing new challenges as they build their life together, or perhaps seeing how they help others bridge similar divides. What would you like to see in their continuing story? What aspects of their relationship and their worlds would you want to explore further? Let me know in the comments below, and perhaps we'll embark on another journey with our favorite warrior healer and his diplomatic star. After all, some stories are too good to end with just one chapter. Would you like to see more of River and Sarah's story?